On a freezing winter morning, when the streets were barely awake and the sky held a dim, pale light, Ethan walked along the same path he took every day, his shoulders slightly hunched against the cold. His life wasn't moving fast, but he kept going with the slow determination of someone who had learned to survive long before he learned to dream. His backpack hung loosely, worn at the edges, carrying nothing special, just small pieces of his routine. His breath faded into the air in soft clouds as he walked, each step steady but carrying a quiet heaviness. As he passed the old bakery at the corner, he noticed something out of place. A small boy, thin jacket, red ears, stiff fingers, stood quietly near the doorway. He wasn't asking for help. He wasn't crying. He was simply standing there like someone who had learned to expect very little. People walked past him without even seeing him. Cars rushed by. The world moved as if he wasn't there at all. Ethan slowed down. His feet stopped before his thoughts did. Something in the boy's stillness felt louder than the city around him. He walked over, his voice gentler than usual. Waiting for someone. The boy nodded once. My mom. She works inside. I wait here. The words were simple, but the cold in his voice said more. Ethan looked toward the bakery window. The warm glow inside felt like a different world. He could have left. He was already late. He had bills. He had problems. But kindness doesn't ask for perfect timing. It just asks for a moment. He sat beside the boy on the cold concrete. The chill bit straight through his jeans, but he didn't move. The boy looked at him with quiet surprise, as if unsure why anyone would choose to stay. They remained there in calm silence, the kind that doesn't need fixing. Ethan reached into his backpack and pulled out a small container of homemade soup he had packed for himself. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't much. But when he offered it, the boy's eyes softened like someone had handed him warmth itself. He held it carefully, sipping slowly, each sip thawing a little more of the cold around him. At that moment, the bakery door opened. A tired woman stepped out, flour on her sleeves, exhaustion in her eyes. She froze when she saw her son holding warm soup and a stranger sitting beside him. Worry hit her face first, then faded when she met Ethan's calm expression. I'm sorry, she whispered quickly, almost as if the apology had lived on her tongue for years. I can't afford childcare, he waits here while I work. Ethan shook his head gently. He just looked cold. Her eyes filled with gratefulness too deep for words. She explained her long shifts, the bills, the struggle of being alone in a world that didn't slow down for anyone. Ethan didn't judge. He listened with the quiet understanding of someone who knew what it meant to feel tired of being tired. Before leaving, Ethan offered softly, I can wait with him in the mornings. If that helps. Her breath caught. Her relief showed before her voice did. Thank you, she managed, holding her son close. And so, without planning it, a simple act of noticing began a small bond, one that neither of them knew would change more than just their mornings. Days folded into each other, and every morning Ethan found himself walking with a little more purpose than before. The cold was still the same, the street still cracked, the world still rushed past him, but now there was something waiting at the bakery step. Caleb stood there with the kind of excitement children try to hide but never really can. Sometimes he held a small drawing made with a broken pencil. Sometimes he had a story ready before Ethan even sat down. Sometimes he didn't say anything at all, just smiled in a way that warmed the space between them more than the winter sun ever could. Ethan brought small things when he could, half a sandwich, a warm drink, a silly joke, a story from his own childhood he hadn't told anyone in years. What surprised him most wasn't that the boy enjoyed these things, but that Ethan himself began to feel less alone. He had spent years drifting through mornings like a ghost, barely noticed, barely engaged. Now, for the first time in a long time, he found himself looking forward to something simple. 15 minutes of shared stillness. 15 minutes that made his day feel less empty. Caleb's mother slowly began trusting those moments too. She would step outside sometimes just to watch them talk. She didn't interrupt, she didn't have to. The tiredness on her face softened whenever she saw her son laughing. She worked long hours, but the ache of worry she carried each morning began to loosen its grip. Someone was watching over her child without expecting anything in return. Someone who understood quiet struggle without being told. But one morning, the routine shattered. Caleb stood alone again, the cold sharper than usual, his small hands tucked tightly in his sleeves. He kept glancing down the street, trying to spot Ethan's familiar walk. Minutes passed. People hurried by. The bakery door opened and closed. Still no Ethan. His mother came out early, already sensing something was wrong by the way her son held himself. She wrapped an arm around him, whispering comfort she didn't fully feel. She had grown used to the small peace Ethan brought, and without it, the morning felt heavier than before. Hours later, Ethan finally appeared, breath visible in the air from how fast he had been walking. His face carried apology even before he spoke. He crouched down in front of Caleb and said, "I'm sorry I wasn't here earlier." He took a slow breath, still catching up with his own heartbeat. "I had a job interview. A big one." Caleb's eyes widened with worry that turned into hope. Ethan continued, voice quieter now, almost disbelieving. "I got it. It was a job he wasn't sure he'd ever be considered for. Better pay. Better hours. A chance for stability he had never truly tasted." The mother covered her mouth, tears pushing forward before she could stop them. Her congratulations came out shaky, carrying joy and relief she didn't even know she was holding. Caleb threw his arms around Ethan without hesitation, the hug small but full of pride. The weeks that followed felt different. Ethan's schedule shifted. His steps grew lighter. Life that had once been stuck in place finally began to move. But even as he settled into his new rhythm, he never forgot the bakery steps. He visited when he could, always greeted by Caleb's bright eyes and the mother's quiet, grateful smile. Then came the evening snow, soft, slow, filling the street with a silence that made everything feel suspended. Ethan walked toward the bakery carrying a warm jacket folded under his arm, 2 boxes of groceries, and a small envelope sealed carefully. When Caleb and his mother opened the door, surprise lit their faces, followed by a warmth that had nothing to do with the heater inside. Ethan handed the jacket to Caleb, the food to his mother, and the envelope to both of them. Inside the envelope was a simple handwritten note, "Thank you for making my mornings feel human again. You didn't know it, but you helped me more than I ever helped you." The mother pressed a hand to her chest, silent tears drifting down her cheeks. Caleb held Ethan's hand in both of his, not wanting to let go. The connection between them didn't need big words. It lived in the small things, the shared morning quiet, the trust built slowly, the warmth exchanged without measurement. Kindness didn't save the world. It didn't erase bills or struggles or the cold reality of life. But it changed 3 lives quietly, deeply, in ways none of them expected. Ethan had shown up once, just for a moment, and that moment had grown roots. Caleb had given Ethan a reason to look forward to mornings he once dreaded. And the mother had reminded Ethan that strength comes in many forms, including the kind that works long hours and still manages to love fiercely. Kindness doesn't need to be loud to matter. It doesn't need to be perfect to change someone's day. Sometimes it's a cup of warm soup. Sometimes it's a small conversation in the cold. Sometimes it's simply noticing someone standing alone and choosing to stay. And somewhere, someone near you may be waiting for a moment like that, quiet, simple, and full of human warmth.